welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to belt. So if you want to be singing with diva-like power in your voice or teach your students to, stay tuned for these 5 tips. This means really understanding foundationally where your chest, head, and mixed ranges happen to occur in your voice. So this takes a little while to understand. And to feel this, you've got to know that as we go up higher in our range, what our chords naturally should do is actually stretch out. And that stretching and thinning is created by singing in a breathier, lighter way. If you've ever experienced your voice cracking or flipping, this is when you try to resist that from happening. And sometimes that resistance places so much tension on your voice, it causes it to actually jolt and flip. The chords bounce off of each other. So paying attention and knowing where in your range as you get higher, where that naturally wants to happen, is a really good way for you to develop an understanding of where your head, chest, and mixed voice ranges lie. And believe it or not, this actually helps you to understand what vocal part you are, whether it's alto, soprano, tenor, or bass, or mezzo-soprano, or baritone. So try this with me for a second. We're gonna do some singing on ya, and we're gonna do some sliding, and I want you to naturally feel where your voice wants to flip into that higher range, where it wants to flip and crack. If you feel a tremendous amount of tension as you get up, you may be resisting this a little too much, by the way. So that's my one caveat for that. So we're gonna sing ya, change that happened to my voice there. That note happened to be B flat, and for me, that's where my voice likes to flip naturally into my head resonance. So really having a good understanding of where those placements are is key to understanding your belt. Another way that you can know your limits is to practice speaking in some of these different resonances to really feel what it is when your chords stretch out and when they contract or get thicker and shorter. So they contract and get thicker and shorter for lower sounds and stretch out and get thinner for those higher sounds. So if you practice speaking normally, you'll feel what it's like to sing in the chest range, which is where most of us are a little more comfortable. That's when our chords are thicker and shorter and they make more of a dense, strong sound. But if we were to lighten it and speak in a more breathy way, we could feel what it is to speak in head voice. And you can hear my voice naturally raises as I sing, as I speak in this. And that mimics what happens when I'm singing. And then you can try a variety of different levels in between that too. Tip number 2 I have for you is understanding your resonance. So as I worked with students over the years, one thing that I have really begun to understand is that resonance, which is basically the vibration of your sound that moves up as you sing higher, it really starts to travel even incrementally by pitch as you sing higher and higher in your range. This is something that I've used to help students who really struggle with pitch, but it's also something that I help students with when they're trying to understand things like belting or placement of their sound. So try this for me for a second. Try to hum in your normal speaking voice range. You'll feel the vibration probably around your lips, maybe a little bit higher. And that's really where your chest voice mostly sits. Now if we try it a little bit of a higher placement, a higher pitch, I'm gonna feel the vibration more on the bridge of my nose. And then if I try even higher than that, I'll start to feel and sense the vibration in here. So not only do the stretching and the contraction of the chords happen as we move higher and lower in our range, but we're also gonna feel the vibration move higher up in our body. And so by practicing speaking in these different vibrations going up and down and tracking them, you're going to really understand how to control that vibration and to capitalize upon it as you go higher up, which will give you much more strength in your voice. Tip number 3 I have for you guys in order to strengthen your voice and work on your belt in your singing voice. Experimentation. I cannot emphasize how much experimentation is great for learning how to do things like belting, riffing, and any other vocal techniques. And so we talked about some of the different ways that you could experiment with your voice in the past 2 tips, but another couple ways that you could experiment is by recording your voice, kind of like what I'm doing now, sometimes video recording, but also audio recording your voice and listening back and evaluating and experimenting that way with what works and what doesn't work. Well, what if I try out placing the sound here? What if I try out speaking with a little bit, speaking the sound first and then singing it? So trying some different things out and seeing what has an impact. That's the way that you can make this measurable. So experimentation is really key. And that may also mean experimentation with different acoustic environments. Right now, the acoustic environment that I'm in right now actually has amazing acoustic feedback, which is really ideal for belting. Yeah, I can hear the sound actually reverberate back to me, and I don't really have to overwork or stress my voice to get that belt back to me. So the right acoustic environment, recording yourself, experiment with these things and trial and error it. Don't be afraid to do a little experimentation. That's how we learn new skills and begin to really polish them up. And if you don't get it the first time, remember, it is not failure. You are learning. You're learning what works and what doesn't work. And if something you trip up, that's okay, because it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. We can cross that off the list. We're getting a little closer to what does work. So experimentation, really key for finding that belt. Tip number 4 I have for you guys. This is really, really, really important. Safety. I almost considered putting this first on the list, but I thought it might not make sense until we kind of explored some of the other basic foundational stuff. It is so important that you're practicing safe habits when you're belting. Belting isn't inherently an unsafe thing, and believe me, I was told it was unsafe as a classical singer, and I know many other classical singers who have been told that, or that myth is, kind of widespread. It is not inherently an unsafe thing, but it can be, as a lot of things in voice can be, if it's used improperly or in excess. So we really want to be mindful of taking certain safety precautions. My number 1 thing that I would say to you is that you really need to understand foundationally how your voice works before you attempt doing something like belting. It is like building a house on sand. If you don't understand how to breathe properly, how to sing without tension, how your different resonances work in your voice, like that chest, head, and mix range, if you don't really have a good understanding of those things, then you're not going to be able to belt safely. Belting is, when it comes down to it, it's a stylistic thing that we can do with our voice, but without really having that strong foundation, it's like building a house on sand. We're not building a system that can support that technique. So it's really, really important that we understand those foundational things first. Another thing that you need to understand is when you're starting out, it's going to take a while to build up that endurance with the belt. And endurance, I don't mean pushing through when you feel pain. I mean using the proper form for belting, a healthy form that's not going to stretch your voice, which we'll talk about in a second. But doing it in a way that's not just achieved by yelling. It takes a while to understand that form and a longer time to be able to uphold that form for longer stretches of time. So it's really, really important when you're learning how to belt at first that I wouldn't do it more than about 5 minutes at a time, because just like if you were beginning a new exercise routine with your body, you wouldn't just decide, okay, I've never exercised before, but I'm gonna do weightlifting for 3 hours and expect that you could maintain the proper form that wouldn't injure your body. When we're talking about voice, we're talking about something even more delicate than the muscles of your arms or legs, for example. You're talking about tendons which are supported by muscles in your throat, very delicate muscles. So we don't want to place undue stress on them. So no longer than about 5 minutes, that's how you can maintain that proper form. You also want to have a teacher who can evaluate you when you are doing it in your lessons and really can look out for any warning signs. So that might mean, that they look out for if they're hearing periods of tension or pushing or sudden abrupt increases in volume for no reason. That would indicate some potential issues. And then things that you want to look out for yourself, that's also important. So if you're feeling hoarse when you're belting, if you're feeling a sense like you need to cough, if you're feeling some squeezing sensations in your throat, all of these are indications that you're not doing it properly and indications that your voice is telling you to step back and take a break. So listen to your body. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Singing should feel effortless, and belting feels pretty intense, like intense vibration, and can take a lot of air and support, but it shouldn't hurt. That's not right. So really pay attention to those safety precautions and make sure that you are upholding them when you're learning how to do this new skill. Can't emphasize that enough. Safe belting is the best kind of belting for your voice. Tip number 5. The best way that I can teach you how to belt, besides experimenting with your voice, which would be doing things like, whoa! I'm bringing my voice up, my strength of my voice up. I'm not yelling, whoa! It doesn't feel clenched inside. But also, we can do some stretching with our singing voice too. So if we focus on bringing that strength into our higher range and feeling it project off of the forehead while staying relaxed and released internally, then we can start to understand what it is to belt. First, I'm going to show you what it's not, what it means, what it doesn't mean to belt. The first one that I'm going to do is a gentle, normal switch, which we saw earlier. Ya. You can hear that my voice switches into a lighter tone known as head voice. Okay. This is also what I don't want. I don't want to yell as I get higher. Ya. I'll feel a little irritation inside because there's a tremendous amount of pressure placed on my vocal cords when I do that. But instead, I take a nice low breath. Ya. And I feel the projection in here very intensely and lots of open space. Ya. It's very important that I continue to fuel my sound as well with the air, because if I stop releasing the air into my sound, I'm going to get tight and I'm going to start to increase the pressure on my cords and try to produce the sound by yelling again, starting to enact improper form, which is not what I'm going for. As you get higher and you start to learn how to belt a little bit more into your upper range, you're going to feel the belt switch from here and more project and pinging off of your forehead, which is more known as a reinforced head voice. So it'll feel like head voice, but with a lot of forward resonance on top. Okay, now I do have one more bonus tip for you before you leave, but real quick, I want to say, if you did find this information helpful, please don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button so you can hear more about how to improve your voice and how to grow your music lessons business. And if there's something else that you want to hear from me, please comment below, or if you enjoyed this content, again, please like it. I would really, really appreciate that. So your bonus tip is develop some mad technical skills. With a Z, no, just kidding. We can put it with an S. So this is actually about how you place your muscles when you're doing your belt. The first thing I would say to you is that a forward high tongue placement is much easier for belting than keeping that tongue low. When we keep the tongue lower, it's going to darken the sound and make it harder to belt. We want a nice bright sound. A bright sound is one that carries and it has more of a trumpety feeling to it. Yeah. And then your tongue kind of acts as a slide, and it's like the sun goes out, so that people can really hear it, okay? The other thing is that we want to open up in all directions in the front of the mouth. Now, many singers will tell you, and I'm definitely one of these, that we don't want to widen our lips when we sing, because we're going to get a nasal sound. Yeah. For more on this, check out my suggested video on nasal singing, how to avoid a nasal singing voice. But for the purposes of what we're doing today, I'm going to kind of backtrack on that a little bit. I don't want you to sing with a wide mouth. I want you to sing with a mouth that opens in all directions. Okay? Yeah. That keeps the sound nice and bright, but it's also balanced with some height. I'm not just simply widening, I'm opening in all directions. Whereas if I pout, yeah, I get a very operatic sound that's a lot darker. So these are some other ways that we can work on improving that belt. All right, guys, thanks so much. Again, if you found this video helpful, please check out some of the other suggestions. Until that time, follow your passion and keep on hustling.